There we go. All right, now you can hear me. Good afternoon and welcome to the first March meeting of 2022 for the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I am President Catherine Staub and I am delighted to see you all here today. We are going to start with Monsignor Bugnano giving us a moment of inspiration, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test. You too can sign up for a moment of inspiration, either in the lobby or online. Monsignor?
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much. Yeah, as we stand here together, we're watching the news and we're very, very heartbroken about the folks in Ukraine, that crisis there as a result of greed and ego, control of other people. Bad. So I've been praying every day, probably you too, because we need the hand of God to get in there and straighten it out in some way or other. And God can do all things, and I believe that. And yesterday was, as you know, Ash Wednesday and beginning of the 40 days of Lent. And so it's a good time. I can't bring peace to Ukraine. I can't bring peace except to me and to you and to my friends, my family. So that's where we start. We have something to do. We have to get going on peace in our own lives and in our relationships. Now we do that, and don't worry, it'll have an effect, maybe more broadly than you and I imagine. So we're gonna pray for that wonderful prayer of peace of St. Francis. Pray with me. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there's darkness, light. And where there's sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console others, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Thank you for our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you.
Now greet your fellow Rotarians.
Woohoo, woohoo, woohoo. No. Hi, Kitty.
Hi, Brian. I don't think we have any assessment. I met Lucy. All right, we want to wish a big happy birthday to Hal Chase today. And then we welcome 4 guests to Rotary today. So if each of you would stand as we introduce you. First of all, we have Ryan, who's a guest of Jason Stuyvesant. Welcome, Ryan. Amelia, guest of Matt Busick. Welcome. Emily, guest of Carter Smith. Where did they sit? There they are. Welcome. And Terrence, a guest of Christina. Terrence is going to soon become our newest member. So, You can see their full names and their organizations on the PowerPoint. We're delighted to have each of you here with us today. And we have a new member introduction. We have Brian Newton. I'll be introducing Brian. You want to just stand while I introduce you so everybody can see? So Brian, you've got a free day. What would we find you doing? He says getting outside, going for a bike ride, or heading to a park for a hike. Where in the world have you traveled and can't wait to go back? Alaska. We did an Alaskan cruise a few years ago, and I would go back in a heartbeat. I have to back up to the first answer. You should, if you haven't already, join our hiking fellowship. You can lead us down new trails. Yes, Denise is in charge, so she, I'm sure, will make sure that happens. Question number 3, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Do what is right, not easy. Excellent advice. 4, what talent or skill do you possess that might surprise or delight people? Brian is a state licensed soccer coach and coached his son's youth soccer teams for more than 10 years. Way to go. And last question, you're joining Rotary. What can't you wait to tell your friends about our organization? Rotary provides me the opportunity to connect with community leaders and hear from a variety of speakers on a variety of topics. The focus on our community is great. Thank you, Brian. We are delighted to welcome you to the Rotary Public Meeting. And with a not so happy segue to our Rotary Club of Des Moines Hiking Fellowship, we had planned to hike for this Saturday, and it's like 80% chance of thunderstorms. As a result of that, we are canceling. But Denise and I will certainly plan a new hike for April, and we'll let you know about that. And we will expect to see Brian there. All right, and now speaking of Denise, Denise is going to introduce our program.
Thank you, President Catherine. Oh boy, can't wait to get Brian out on the hiking trail. It's my pleasure today to introduce Kevin Foley. I love the Des Moines Airport, and I was in the process of renewing my global entry, and it's been pending for about 3 months. And so I called and ready to complain and la la la. Well, anyway, they took good care of me, got everything taken care of, so thumbs up for the airport. But anyway, Kevin has really spent his entire career in aviation. He got his bachelor's degree, his MBA in aviation management. He was a corporate pilot. He was the manager of the Dubuque Regional Airport. He's done almost everything in the aviation industry and then he was also the associate professor of aviation for the University of Dubuque before he came to the Des Moines International Airport. He started at the airport in 2008 as a property administrator, quickly moved up the ranks to transition to deputy aviation director in January of 2009, then to assistant executive director in 2011, and then the executive director in 2014, and there have been so many changes since then. And he told me to keep this brief, and actually this is all I got, so they're really, I'm sure there's a lot more to Kevin Foley than is in this, but I'm gonna let him share it all with you. I also wanted to let you know that he's a certified flight instructor and a multi-engine commercial pilot. And I think it would be great fun if he would offer to take us flying someday. So anyway, with that, you can tell us all about your personal life and the airport.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Probably the most unique introduction I've had. And I have not touched a yoke on an airplane since I've been in Des Moines. I'm probably the last person that you want to see up in a cockpit. So while I still hold all those certificates, I'm not currently current. Des Moines International Airport and the terminal project. You've probably been reading a lot in the paper, and I'm going to talk about some things today that my bosses haven't even seen yet, because we were in a meeting all day yesterday looking at some things, trying to figure out how to reduce cost and realign some things on the terminal project. So we'll walk through some slides here that, again, the board hasn't even seen. We promote the airport as Iowa's airport, and we do that just to irritate Cedar Rapids. We do that because we have 65% of all the passenger traffic in the state of Iowa. There's 8 commercial service airports in the state. 65% of everybody coming in and out of the state comes through Des Moines. And we also have a little over 50% of all the cargo. And I'm pretty confident that that number will grow because there's only 2 airports that have cargo operations, Cedar Rapids and Des Moines. And we just acquired Amazon Prime a few months ago, several months ago, and we're hoping that that operation continues to grow. We are an airport authority, meaning that we are independent from the city of Des Moines, except that the city of Des Moines does appoint my bosses. The city council appoints them, nominates them, the mayor appoints them, they come back for approval to the city council. Report to a 5-person board. All of them have to live in the city of Des Moines because we're Des Moines Airport Authority. Beyond that, the only other connection that we have with the city anymore is have a service agreement for law enforcement officers. We do have the right to hire and develop our own police force at the airport. It just doesn't make sense to duplicate those duties and responsibilities when the city of Des Moines is willing to provide that for us. We did an economic impact study back in 2014. And out of that impact study, the airport provides or has an economic impact on the state of Iowa, $644 million annually. Now we know it's larger than that, or at least it was larger than that back in 2019, but we're growing again, and we, the passenger traffic coming through the terminal today even is much greater than it was in 2014, so that we know, that's how we know that it's a greater impact. But we are just an economic engine for the area. One of the things that came out of the studies that have been going on to update the terminal project, well, let me back up. As we move forward, we brought on board a owner's representative team. Now this team is a team of about 20 people, architects, engineers, airline folks. One of the things that they did early on was to update the information that we had and was last developed in 2018. They looked at our terminal area forecast, and in aviation we like to talk in acronyms, and so you're going to hear me call that a TAF from now on. That's what we call a terminal area forecast, but they updated that. The last one that was done in 2014, and it was short, woefully short. In 2019, we reached almost 3,000 passengers coming through our terminal. According to the last TAF, we shouldn't have reached that number until 2027. So we were growing much, much faster than what was projected. They looked at our TAF. One of the things they looked at was the number of seats coming in and out of Des Moines going forward. So that blue line that's on that graph represents airline seats coming in and out of Des Moines up through July. The black line is the number of seats we had in 2019. If we fill those seats, we're going to have a large increase in passengers coming through the terminal as opposed to 2019. And 2019 was a record year. So why? Why was Des Moines growing so much faster than the national average and growing so much faster than most other airports? This is the growth, the population growth in Des Moines MSA from 2010 through 2020. You can see that we were growing about 2 times faster than the United States. Going forward, 2020 to 2040, we're still going to grow much faster. It's projected we will grow much faster than the United States, but not quite as excessive. Though that growth constitutes passenger traffic through the terminal. It's just that simple. If you look at the last census, Iowa grew in the last census, but the vast majority of the growth was right here in the Des Moines MSA. There was some growth in the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City MSA, but most of it was right here in Des Moines. So what's that do? What's going forward? What's that look like in passenger traffic? Again, the blue line is the new terminal area forecast, and the black line is the forecast that was provided in 2014. The vertical blue line takes us up to the middle of 2023. But what you can see there is to the left side of that vertical line is what's actually happened. You see the drastic drop in passenger traffic that occurred in April of 2020, and then recovery that has been going on since then. What's worrisome to me, trying to run, this measures enplanements, people getting on the airplane. For every person that gets on, we hope one gets off. So you just double that number. That's 5 million passengers going through the terminal by 2042 is what that projection is. Again, much higher than previous terminal area forecast. 2018, as of second quarter of 2018, we did a market analysis. Some people call it a leakage study. We literally were looking at where did our passengers come from? Those passengers that should have come through Des Moines and didn't, which airport did they go through, and why? You try to figure out why. Why are they not coming through Des Moines? One of the things that was most surprising to me is, we kind of get myopic in our vision, and you assume that all the passengers coming through the terminal are local passengers. They live here in the Des Moines MSA, and that's where all of our traffic's coming from. It's not. Only 57% of our traffic coming through the terminal are what we would call local passengers. 43% of the traffic coming through our terminal is coming in from out of state or out of country, coming in to do business in Iowa or for leisure purposes, and then leaving again. And that just surprised me. I didn't think the number would be that high, but it is. So when we say that we're an economic tool and we have an economic impact, think about all those travelers coming through the airport to do business in this area. One of the other things it told us, and this kind of bothered me a little bit when I knew how they were tracking this, but we could track which zip code our local passengers were coming from. The reason it bothered me, if you think about how you buy tickets, you go on Google and you bring up the airline, and eventually you pull out your credit card and you buy the ticket online. Google can track that and they can report that back by your address on your credit card. That's kind of scary, but everybody else was doing it, and I thought I needed that same information. So if you look at those zip codes there, you will see that you got to get down to number 10 before you hit a Des Moines zip code. Local passengers, most of our traffic, the biggest share of our traffic by zip code is coming from the suburbs of Des Moines. It's not coming from Des Moines. Now, Des Moines' geographic area is much larger than it is in suburbs, and they have more zip codes. So when you add up all the zip codes, yeah, there's a lot more passengers coming from Des Moines, but zip code by zip code, they're coming from the suburbs. There's 3 pages. This whole report's 120 pages long, and I'm only showing you just a sampling of some of the information that was provided. Demographics were provided through this report. I can tell you, average incomes, average ages, all those types of things of our travelers. This stoplight chart was developed back in 2014, which was the first study. 2014, when the FAA updated our terminal area forecast, we then hired consultants and said, will this terminal accommodate all of those passengers? They developed this stoplight chart to tell us, if we were adequate. Green's good, yellow's okay, red's bad. Down on the bottom, and I know that's pretty small, is all of the amenities that affect passengers. Restrooms, inbound baggage systems, outbound baggage systems, the hold rooms, the number and the size of the hold rooms. And at the time that they did the study, we were mostly in the yellow, a few greens. Fast forward to 2019, and you can see we're solidly in the red in all of those amenities. The passenger terminal was simply too small. We didn't have the systems in place to accommodate the passengers. And the dates are over here on the left side. We weren't supposed to hit that again until 2027. So our growth was about 10 years ahead where we had projected that we would be. Today, we have Allegiant, which is a base. The reason that's a big deal is because as a base, we can travel to any place that Allegiant serves. If you're not a base, then you're limited to only go to and from a base, but we are a base, so we can go anywhere that they serve. They started in July of 2021. They introduced 5 flights right away. Orange County has been introduced for this year, an additional destination. That starts in April. But 2 days ago, they announced Newark. So this slide is outdated already, so they will be going into Newark. I think they said July is for that as well, if I remember right. This is probably the reason that we're running at 90% of passenger traffic as compared to 2019. In other words, most of the traffic coming through the terminal today is leisure travel. It's not business travel. Business travel is starting to come back, but it's not back in full force yet. So to get to 90%, the majority of the travel is leisure or personal travel. And in large part, I think it's Allegiant and the cheaper flights that we have. This graph just, I put it on there, it measures, the orange measures our passenger traffic, the blue measures the number of seats coming in and out of Des Moines. The green is actually the percentage of growth as compared to 2009. And we went back to 2009 because that was the start of the recovery of the Great Recession. That was when we started to recover. What it shows, though, is in 2019, or by 2019, we had a 67% passenger growth going through the terminal. Of course, once again, you see what happened in April of 2020, and then we're slowly gaining back, coming back, such that we're at about 90 to 95% of 2019 traffic today. This is our route map. We've increased routes, nonstop routes out of Des Moines from 19 to about 30 routes. Again, the slide's outdated because of what we introduced. So we have 30 routes, nonstop routes coming in and out of the airport. Many of them are seasonal because they're on Allegiant. They are seasonal routes, but many of them are year-round as well. The reason I put this on there is not just routes, though. I've been talking about the congestion, the demand capacity issue in the terminal for passengers. We're starting to run out of places to park airplanes around the gates at the terminal, and that's what's most concerning to me. Overnight, we have 21 airplanes around the terminal on gates. It is not uncommon for airports to have what's called remote parking, where aircraft park off the gate someplace. The airline has to launch a flight, go retrieve that airplane, tow it up, and then they can launch another flight. The airlines don't like to do that because there's a delay involved in that towing, but they do it, and they do it all around the nation. That's fine. I'm fully willing to do that, except that around the terminal itself, we've only got 5 of those remote parking spots. At least one of them is used every night right now, and on some nights there's 2 airplanes, which leaves me 3 spots. I have a air service development person who's very good at what she does. She actually just got back from a speed dating conference. Now I always have to finish that sentence, a speed dating conference with the airlines, because she is married. Over a 2-day period, she can get in front of 10 airlines for 20 minutes and make a pitch to to 10 different airlines over why they should serve Des Moines in some capacity. Many of them are already here. We have 6 airlines here. But she does visit with new airlines as well. I will tell you in February of 2020, she and I were in Seattle visiting 2 airlines. One was Amazon. The other was Alaska Air. And Alaska Air point blank told us they would be here in the fall of 2021. Now we left on Friday. And on that Thursday, when we were in their office, was the announcement of the first death in the United States from COVID-19 virus. So you know the pandemic just stopped and delayed that. They are still very interested in Des Moines. There's other airlines that are looking seriously at Des Moines. If they come and say they have to be on a gate overnight, we have to decide who we're going to push off a gate. That's going to be a tough conversation. It more than likely will be one of the legacy carriers, American, United, or Delta, because they have multiple airplanes on the gate overnight. Again, they're the ones, you know, you dance with the one that brought you, and those legacy carriers are the one that brought us. But if you want additional service, we're going to have to push one of them off the gate overnight. I mean, it's just that simple. The terminal project, what's it look like? If you've been to the airport lately, the red on here is this new entrance. We've co-located the entrance and the exit at the stoplight, and that's one reason that we moved it, is to get it at a stoplight, and you're only entitled so many stoplights in a given distance, so we weren't going to get a second one. The other reason is everybody in this room knows where you're going and what happens when you're going to the airport. But we are attracting people today who are 90 plus miles away, maybe 120 miles away because of the cheaper tickets. They may have not flown for 5 years. They may not have flown for the last 20 years. And I say that because going through screening, the number of people today that are still taking 10-ounce bottles of shampoo, conditioner, trying to get through screening is just amazing to me. But that tells me that they haven't flown for a very long time, at least, you know, since 9/11. Those people don't know where they're going when they come onto the airport. They're relying on signage. If you think about the old entrance, as soon as you pulled on the airport, you started making decisions. Do I go right into Signature or at that employee parking? Do I go left down Duck Pond Road? You go about 20 yards further in long-term and hourly parking, and do I want to go in from the terminal? Where's the economy lot? And they would literally stop, sometimes right on the white line, blocking both lanes, blocking traffic back out onto Fleur. The new entrance, it extends or spreads those decision points out. So if somebody comes on, the signage isn't clustered, it won't be clustered real close together, and their decisions are more easily made for those people who aren't familiar with the airport. Fast forward onto that pink or that magenta area, that's phase 2 and 3 of the entrance road that has been bid. The construction on that will start as soon as spring allows for it to start. That loop down at the bottom of the page, the lower right down there, will become the entrance to the new garage. The new garage is under design and is depicted there in the orange. That construction will start in 2023. I know that those 2 projects will be started and completed. The road and the garage will be started and completed. At that point, we're down to the green, which is the new terminal itself. And I'm still optimistic that that will be completed. This is an artist's rendering of what you would see, and this is pretty accurate actually as you pull onto the airport now. We're very thankful to the Greater Des Moines Art Foundation. They paid for that art that's called Liftoff by Ellis Aycock. It's an $850,000 piece of art that is on permanent loan to the airport, and so we're very appreciative of them because it's a substantial investment in us. Going forward, phase 2 and 3, you see where the lane splits there. On the right would be the entrance into that loop that will become the entrance into the garage. If you stay to the left, that'll take you down in front of the new terminal. This is what you would see traveling south on Fleur Drive. You see the loop there, transitioning into the garage on the loop. So I said I was optimistic the terminal would be built, and I am optimistic that the terminal would be built. The owner's representative firm that we brought on has financial people on board as well. Their first task was bring us up to date from 2018. What's changed? What's changed because of the pandemic? What's changed in technology? The pandemic has brought technology on at a much more rapid pace than what anybody has anticipated. And what's changed financially? In that gold box is what is terribly concerning. The first thing they did was inflate the numbers from 2018 to today, to 2022. And the project inflated $82 million. Then they inflated it to mid-year construction of 2025. And it inflated another $97 million. It's $180 million, $190 million that we didn't count on. I mean, it's just that simple. And that's what inflation is doing to us. Time is not our friend on this project. So after I picked myself up and dusted myself off, when they showed us these numbers, said, all right, what can we do? Let's look at what we can do to get this project started. And we're looking at absolutely everything. Yesterday, we spent the entire day in the room with them. These folks are coming from all over the country, so they come in for a 3-day period when they come up. And we looked at how can we get this done? How can we reduce cost? And how can we phase this so that we can do it as money becomes available? Came out with a pretty good plan, I think, where you start with the processor and maybe 5 gates and attach that processor into the existing gates, tearing down the old terminal itself, but the concourses would stay. And then you add on and tear down concourses as money becomes available. But how soon is money going to become available? We are in a period right now. You've all heard of the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation that was passed, literally called the bill. In that bill, there's $20 billion for airport terminal development. First time in history that specific dollars for terminal development has been allocated. Out of that, Des Moines is going to get guaranteed, because part of it's by equation, we'll get about $27 million. Then there's another $5 billion in total that's competitive for all airports. For airports the size of Des Moines, it's $1 billion. There's 69 airports the size of Des Moines competing for $1 billion. And it's split over a 5-year period, so it's $200 million a year. Des Moines needs all of at least 1 year to complete this project. We're not going to get it. How much do I think that we should get? Well, I think we should get a whole year, but the reality is we're probably going to see somewhere between $20 and $50 million over a 5-year period out of that competitive process. Now I know Congress is going to hold that up and say, look what we did. Look at all of this infrastructure that we've built. I don't care what mode of transportation you're talking about. That bill is nothing more than a down payment on the infrastructure needs of the United States, especially at airports. There is, Airports Council International every year does a survey of infrastructure development needs. That need on this last survey this year was $115 billion. We've got $20 billion in that bill. It's 20%. It's a down payment. Going forward though, since we've broken the seal, there's actually an obligation that once the federal government starts a project, they are obligated to help you finish that project. And since we've broken the seal and actually have monies available for terminals now, I gotta believe that going down the road, some other dollars will be available. Maybe I'm overly optimistic, but I don't think there's a lot of projects that are gonna get started that won't be able to be finished if they don't get additional funding. So You've probably read in the paper or seen that we've been getting allocations, dollars from municipalities and counties. On the right is the stack that we developed after several meetings with the city managers in the MSA and letting them know that when we visited with the state of Iowa, they said, you've got to show commitment from the community. The best way to show that commitment is by putting some dollars up and giving us a resolution. So we calculated this by population. I will tell you today in my drawer I have 19 resolutions totaling $28.5 million, and we have to go through Story County yet. We haven't visited with the folks in Story County, just setting up meetings with them now. I can't tell you how almost overwhelming it is for the city of Des Moines, Polk County. Each of them stepped up with a $10 million resolution. But Alleman, the town of Alleman's a little town north of Ankeny. 452 people live in that town, and they committed $4,500 to this project. That impact to their budget is huge, even though it's only $4,500. That's a huge impact to their budget. So I don't want to minimize the $10 million donations that we received, but that it just astonishes me that the overwhelming support that we've had. And I will tell you that that's not normal in other communities. I mean, when I talk to my colleagues around the nation, they ask me, what's the secret sauce in Des Moines? How are you doing this? I mean, they would not go out to their local communities and ask for dollars and get them. So kudos to them, to Iowa and the MSA, Des Moines MSA. So how's the funding breakdown here on the left side? We have $18 million of private investment, that signature building on the south side of the field. Our own airport money between bonding and our own cash reserves will put in $224 million. This $34 million incoming from municipalities and counties. But we still have a $307 million shortfall now, and that's the inflated dollar amount. So we will work with the state and our federal delegations, the FAA and our elected officials to see if we can close that funding gap. But we'll also see if we can phase the project. That's what came out of yesterday. Build the primary processor, ticket counters, screening, bag systems. You build that'll be brand new, give us about 5 new gates, and then you attach that to the old concourses until you can afford to continue building the new concourses. I don't like that approach as well, but it gets it done. So again, we're nothing more than an economic hub. Time is not our friend, and inflation is really detrimental to us. A lot of the money that's being allocated toward this is the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. It has a time limit on it. It has to be spent by 2026. Those are the dollars that the state would be contributing toward this project, which basically means that we would have to have it substantially done by 2026, the terminal. We can make that timeline. We do interviews with 3 architectural firms on the 24th of March. Make that selection very quickly, negotiate the contract with them, and get them started on design. As I said, we have our owner's representative team on board now. Construction then scheduled to start in 2024, and 2 years for construction. We would be moving in 2026. Again, that's realistic. That's the timeline that was proposed all the way through. We just pulled it ahead a couple of years. With that, I will take questions about anything about the airport, not about my personal life.
Oh yeah, okay. So the timeline that you have, is that the phasing it in, or is that building the terminal at once? Will it be longer if you have to phase it in?
Yeah, so the question is that timeline, is that building the terminal all at once, or is that the phase process? That's building it all at once. The phase process, again, April 5th, we have a workshop, and we'll present all of this to the board. Ultimately, I don't get to make the final decisions. I get to present options to my 5-person board. They will accept or decline on those.
So I'm sure there's rules and guidelines about where funding can come from that I don't necessarily understand. But when I read the news and things of that nature, I hear about how much extra money we have, so much so that we're lowering taxes on ourselves. Why can't we fix our airport?
So the question is, we have a lot of money, a lot of excess money within the state, and why can't we fix the airport? Why can't some of that come to the airport? Again, I've been meeting with the state, both the Iowa Economic Development Authority and the governor's staff. There will be some of those dollars coming from the state. I'm confident of that. How many of those dollars, I don't know for sure. I will tell you when I took a stack of 15 resolutions in to the Iowa Economic Development Authority and put them on the table and said, here's, and I forget the dollar amount at the time, I think it was $26 million, but here's $26 million of commitment. Debbie Durham, I did exactly what you asked me to do because she's the one who asked me to do it. So now let's talk about dollars. Let's talk about, you know, where's my check? And the plan hasn't been figured out. But to your point, American Rescue Plan Act, the state of Iowa is getting $1.5 billion out of the American Plan Act. They have a surplus of 1.2 sitting in the budget. What's nice about the American Plan Act dollars is the governor has control of those dollars, and she can commit those dollars without going through the legislature. If it's coming out of the general fund, it would have to be approved by the legislature. And then you get into that rural, urban push and pull, and there's less of a chance of getting those dollars. So it's the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that makes this doable.
What's your bonding capacity?
We just ran at 3.25%. We just ran an analysis on that, and it's not exact. It's, you know, it's a fairly high analysis. Until we actually get there, we won't know for sure. And we're not at 3.25% on interest rates yet either. But it was at $130 million that we could bond toward this. I will tell you that we've spent about $100 million already on this project. It's all on the south side of the airport. We relocated FedEx so that we could relocate Des Moines Flying Service and Signature Flight Support to the south side to get them out of the way for the new terminal. So the entire east quadrant, where the terminal is now, that entire quadrant will be commercial air service. This plan fixes a number of things, and I don't normally share this. I'll share it with you because it's going to be over here pretty quick. If you look at where Signature Flight Support is located, and if you think about that they are open 24 hours a day, a general aviation airplane can come in the wee hours of the morning. Now, there's people at the airport all night long. I have people there. Signature Flight Support has people there. The FAA has people there. But it is 3 o'clock in the morning, and it gets pretty slow, and we let our guard down. 20 yards away from Signature, where that airplane would park, and with no barrier, there's 21 airplanes sitting around, 21 commercial air service airplanes sitting around the terminal. In today's world, you can't do that. I mean, I wish it wasn't that way. That has bothered me. I've been here since 2008, and it's bothered me day one that was that accessible. Those airplanes were that accessible to somebody. This fixes that problem. We separate the operations of the airport to where and operate the way it should be.
You may have talked about this, but could you update us on how the number of gates will be impacted with both the primary plan but also with the stage plans? What is the total number of gates that you're anticipating, and when would those be happening?
So the beauty of phasing this is that we would have 19 gates when the new processor opened up. Now, some of them would be the old gates, but we would still have 19 gates. Today we have 12. The TAF, when that was updated, when the TAF was updated, originally in 2014, when this plan was launched, they said you need 14 gates now, and then in 2027 you start planning for 4 more gates. The new TAF says you got to have 17 gates right away, right up front. We've grown to that point. So there will be a period of time now when we're tearing down the old concourses to build new that we're going to be operating off 10 gates, and that's going to be kind of painful. I'm going to be retired. Time for one more question, or?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us an update on the National Guard facility there? I mean, is it being used? What's the plans going forward there?
So the National Guard still has 170 acres for $1 a year. If we could get market rent from them, that would go a long way toward closing our different story. The Guard has a mission today of remotely piloted aircraft. There are no, well, they have one airplane here. It's a reconnaissance airplane, but they don't have any F-16s. They don't have a fleet of airplanes. They sublet, they call it, it's a sublet, they call it a license to the Army. Now, color of money in the military, to me it's all green and it's all DOD money. That's not the way it works. And so there's actually a sublease now to the Army for the ramp area, the aircraft area. And they're planning on bringing the helicopters down from Boone to Des Moines for a number of reasons. But they have to do some construction. The maintenance facility on a fixed wing on an F-16 is different from a helicopter. The engine comes out the top and all those types of things. So there's a number of construction projects that they have to do first. So I don't know when they're going to get here, but that is kind of the plan right now. And then of course the Air Force side, the Air Guard, is continuing to look at, can they get a drone operation here, or can they get some other manned aircraft flight operation here, and they continue to lobby for that. And we welcome, I mean, we're a public airport, we welcome any aircraft that they would bring in.
Thank you for that fascinating presentation about our airport. We are donating a book in your honor through our Rotary Rosie Reader Van. I just cannot wait till Matt has to say that. Through the Des Moines Public Library Foundation. As you know, last year our Rotary Club donated $40,000 to purchase this van through our community grants program. Upcoming meetings here at the Embassy Club next week, March 10th, we have Tanner Kraus with Come and Go. So if that would be of interest to someone you know, please invite them. March 17th, spring break. I'll be skiing. That is not why we're not meeting. We're not meeting because it is spring break and we have huge attendance drop-offs that day. So no meeting March 17th. And then March 24th, Ted Corrigan with the Regional Waterworks. Thank you for being with us today. We are delighted to welcome Brian, our newest member. Thank you to those of you who brought guests today, and welcome once again to our guests. We enjoyed having you, and we hope that you decide, like Terrence did, that you will be a permanent presence at our Rotary Club of Des Moines. With that, we are adjourned.